So welcome everyone to this evening's Dharma talk, that mountain cloud. In the zendo, in the cloud, doors wide open. It's good to be here. It's good to sit together, to sense together the support of this place, the support all around. Actually, not just support, one body. Zen calls it your whole body manifests throughout the 10 directions. In other words, every direction. There is nowhere this body is not. This one true body. Last week, I met with a student in Germany, online. She lives near Lake Constance and loves to be outside. That morning, she'd been out for a walk, and she came to a field of bright blue wildflowers. Oh, I'd like to pick some of these to take home. So pretty. And then she realized, in a heartbeat, I am those flowers. No need to pick. So she came home empty-handed and completely satisfied. She was delighted. A couple of weeks ago, another student shared a bit of her experience of long sitting several days into that recent North American Sambo Zen session that we did, many of us up in Canada. Someone coughed in the zendo, she said. That sound started in my body. One body. And at the same time, so distinct. Yet another student recently sent a short poem that followed on his experience of the 27-day Minyango in Germany just a couple of months ago in May. He's German, but he has declared himself kin to the division and strife that's roiling the USA. And of course, not only here, but this one. He wrote, and this is, his first language is German. All haze, free, perfect, possible, and all fulfilled, already done. Simply throw yourself into the world's heated pan to melt away yourself into one love. This love with no opposite. One love, one body. So how can we let melt away the aching sense of separation. The construct of a fixed self that we set up at the center of an isolated identity, that I, me, mine, that shapes and narrows all our experience. Simply throw yourself into the world's heated pan, says his verse. Our instinct may be to jump out of the pan, to turn away, to seek safety in separation. Zen, Chan, this practice and this tradition, it offers another path. A path through your own human heart, right into the heart of this world. The whole world. For many of us, our hearts are breaking with the magnitude of suffering all across this globe. The globe we know, this home. And close to home. We mourn the victims of the recent flooding in Texas and in Ruidoso. At least 121 dead, including many children. And another 170 still missing. What is this silence? Beyond knowing, it is a gift to have the capacity to share in that suffering, to recognize the one body, and to act accordingly. Sitting with this today, this morning, an ancient instruction that was often given at the beginning of the traditional 3-month practice period for the monks. They called Ango. Ango meaning resting in peace. This old instruction came up. The monks were told, maybe I imagine on that first night before they entered in, before that first set, or maybe a few sits in the first close of day instruction. Sit with the mind of one facing death. If you look in the early sutras, the Buddha was said to teach this Maranasati, it's called. Sit face to face with impermanence. Sit facing the inevitability and uncertainty of death. When will it come? Sit with and in the urgency, therefore, to awaken. The teaching says, this may be your last breath. Well, actually, it is. There is no other time. When we were up at the NAS session in Canada, in one of his talks, Ryon Roshi took up this famous case that's all about this last word. And he spoke to it and told stories about it. And unpacked it as the core message here is compassion. Trying to help this Dharma sibling awaken, this student. Compassion. But the end of the koan comes down to this last word. And the Roshi just said, freely, whatever you say, whatever you do, each bit of it is last word. There's another way to receive the instruction about facing death, this ancient teaching. And that would be through the Dharma gate of Dogen Zenji, through his teaching. That each time we sit, we're not just facing the fact that we will die. We embody in our sitting what Zen calls the great death. Not so highfalutin. Here it is. For Dogen, this sitting is what he called practice awakening, practice enlightenment. You know, putting a hyphen there, but really no room for it. Practicing, realizing. So no matter where we may be on this path, to sit zazen is to express the total liberation that we seek, the embodiment of wisdom and compassion. And then when awakening comes, however it comes, it's not just about you. The whole world is implicated. This one body. There's a koan about the matter of life and death, or what Zen calls the great matter, and the nature of awakening. I'd like to take a moment to look at tonight. This is in the Hekiganroku, or Blue Cliff record. It's case 41. It comes again in the Shoyoroku, or Book of Equanimity, as case 63. And it also shows up in Dogen's collection of 300 Shobogenzo koans, their case 136. Variously titled, but here in the Blue Cliff record, the title is Joshu, or Chao Chou's Great Death. So I'll read the case. First, just a caveat, a reminder that I'm sort of always compelled to say about these talks, whomever is giving them. This isn't a lecture or a discourse. And sometimes I hear people say, wow, I didn't understand anything. Or once a woman so kindly came up, greeted after the talk on a Thursday night, and it had started with some piece of our common world about a podcast I'd seen, and she was like, I just saw that podcast, and she said, I really clued into that, and then you started to talk about a koan, and I didn't understand another word. Fine, really. So the invitation is just to sort of let this language wash over, and if something strikes, let that resound. Know problem, the rest of it. In fact, sometimes I'm giving talks in Europe and all these people who are graciously listening in English, but that is not their first language. And sometimes I think it's an advantage. So here is this case, Blue Cliff Record, Hekiganroku 41. Joshu, or Choucho, asked Tosu, or Tuzi, how is it when a person who has died the great death returns to life? Tosu said, I don't allow walking about in the night. Come in the light of day. Or in another translation, you must arrive in the daylight. End of case. So Joshu, Jiaozhou, famous master, 778 to 897, 120 years old, well documented. A lot of the commentaries say that this exchange was during his 20-year pilgrimage period, sometime between when he was 60 and 80 years old. So after his master Nansen had died. Yamada Kon Roshi, father of our current abbot of Sanbo-zen, he thinks that Joshu was about 100 at this time. Tosu, or Tusi, in this case, is Tosu Daido. If you kind of dive deep into koans, there are two folks named Tosu. So this one clearly lived at the same time as Joshu, 819 to 914, 40 years younger than Joshu, and already a master in this exchange. Joshu is coming from wherever he is coming to check him, to challenge him, to meet his Dharma. What we know about this Tosu Daido, he was a disciple of another master named Suibi Mugaku, and that would make him grandson in the Dharma to Sekito or Shurto. A lot to say there, but he lived during the period of the reign of this Tang Emperor Buso or Wusung, and so experienced this widespread official persecution of Buddhism. We think times are tough, they are. And when you look back on whence this tradition, it was just, lifted up and oppressed, and lifted up and oppressed. So during this time, thousands of monks and nuns were forced to return to lay life, and hundreds of temples were burned. Scott and I sometimes, go sort of deep into our news and think, wow, somebody could show up at our door with a gun, a mask and a gun. This is the equivalent of that. Tosu escaped persecution. He went into hiding on Tosu Mountain, therefore his name, somewhere in eastern China, these beautiful mountains. And he survived by pressing oil and selling it, just little by little, enough to eat. There's not a lot of record about him, but there is one record of a first meeting between Tosu and Joshu. It goes like this. One day, when Joshu happened to pass through the locality, he accidentally came upon someone walking along the road. One glance was enough for Joshu to realize that this was Tosu, just heard of each other. And in this kind of historical telling, Yamada Konroshi inserts, remember, a thief knows another thief. And Joshu says, oh, is this not the master of Tosu Mountain? And Tosu says back, give me money to buy rice and salt. That's it. So they each went on their way after this sort of, I don't know, unassuming exchange. But it's said that Joshu leaves and he goes straight to the summit of Tosu Mountain, sneaks into Tosu's small hermitage, this little hut, and waits there. And after a while, Tosu returns with a jar of oil slung over his shoulder. And as soon as they see each other, Joshu initiates what you could call a dialogue. I mean, yeah, I'm not so fond of the language. They used to call it Dharma combat. They're just meeting each other. Joshu says, I have heard the name of Tosu from afar, but upon coming here, all I find is an old man selling oil. I mean, kind of odd, because he would have been 40 years younger, but you know. And Tosu says, you only see the old oil seller and do not know Tosu. And Joshu says, what is Tosu? And Tosu calls out, oil, oil, who will buy some oil? What is Tosu? What are you? Birdsong, warm breeze, traffic in the distance, sitting, listening, or this sound. What is Tosu? Then there's another time where Joshu comes back to check on him, on Tosu, and he asks this question. How is it when a person who has died the great death returns to life? Tosu says, I don't allow walking about in the night. Come in the light of day. Oh, just sort of tasting the intimacy. This is the bit that made it into the koans. So, why? You know, what's going on? If we just take a moment to look at Joshu's question, his sort of gambit, you know, like they're about to play chess, or his Dharma strike. What about someone who has died the great death and comes back to life? What about great awakening? What if that someone is me? Great death. What might it be to sit with the mind of someone facing that? When everything falls away, all concepts, all stories, all the scaffolding, As Dogen put it so famously, body and mind of self and other drop off. He doesn't say how that happens, but he does point to the fact that in that vacancy, the whole world comes to life. As Dogen says, the myriad things advance and confirm you, confirm us. Floor, desk, mat, mic, computer. Or in another language, just gone, 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 and everything comes rushing in. Your whole body. Great death and great life. Tosu doesn't skip a beat. I don't allow walking about in the night. Come in the light of day. This, I would say, young master meets Joshu Chaocho. What obsolete language are you bringing here? All this talk about life and death. We both know there is no such thing. Oh, by the way, aging Buddhas this coming Sunday. For both of these master practitioners, you could say, this is one great matter. One is the operative word. And that one somehow is resolved, completely resolved. Like the poem of that student. Life, death, sitting, standing, laughing, crying. Just devoid. Well, you could say of any boundary, any separation of anything at all. And each bit, all of it. Oh, it just flashed on the one master who's about to die and his students are gathered round and, waiting for a last word, and he just calls out, "I don't want to die." All of it. I don't allow walking about in the night. Don't hang around like a thief in the night, stealing things as if there were things to steal. Like delusions, concepts, logic, or even words like life and death. Come in the light of day. Come as you are in this ordinary world. Come into this broken world where things need repair. Or maybe more simply, come on over and have a cup of tea. This could be the only Dharma dialogue combat we have in the whole record, this rich record, where Joshu, in a sense, is defeated. And how he must have appreciated Tosu's response, must have been pleased. This message addressed to us here now was no surprise to Joshu. More like bone of my bone. Ordinary mind is the way. His famous turning word from Nansen. Surely Joshu knew about the light of day. When Nansen describes the scene of those monks quarreling and of Nansen grabbing this cat they're fighting over, holding it up before them. Say a word. He's got this knife in his hand. Say a word and I'll spare the cat. What does that say about life and death? Joshu hears it later that evening, takes off his sandals, puts them on his head, and walks out. And leaves Zen students ever since with this, like, what? But Nansen says, if you had been there, I could have spared the cat. Yeah. Just hangs in the air. Life and death. The great matter. Who can speak of it? But Zen does. Zen does speak of it in any number of koans, conveying somehow this, words fail, but we have these words: emptiness, freedom, compassion, inseparability, or life and death with no hyphen, no opposite. For so long, our abbot, this teacher I work with, gratefully so, Yamada Ryon Roshi, has said, a very busy businessman, well, if I ever write a book, the title will be People Do Not Die. It's just an invitation to look into it. See what this is. Yeah. Really. When we grow old, we age and we become ill. Things change. How does that show up in the light of day? In grief, joy, maybe. Tears, frustration, confusion, the wish to help. Whenever I'm looking at these koans, turning to this afresh and anew in earnestness, there's a check on it that comes up on this great unleashing, this unleashing of who we truly are. Well, if in that, in these empty hands, these boundless hearts, there is the slightest bit of dismissal. Oh, it's all empty, so nothing matters. That is not it. The realization, however it comes, of this one body plunges us into this very world, right into the heart of it. On Monday this week, a few days ago, I flew out to Fort Worth, Texas. Used to work there for a long, long time. And first time back in 5 years, since the day I retired, actually, January 2020. I went there to take part in the memorial service for a remarkable woman who was a mentor, generation of students, so many, decade after decade, and she was my dissertation director, Toni Craven. She was a scholar, a woman of faith who got my Zen experience. A devoted mother to a daughter she adopted as a young adult. The daughter was an adult. A fierce advocate for women and a justice maker for those on the margins. I mean, her obituary was miles long. Traveling there and back on one of those smaller planes out of Santa Fe, I read and reread parts of a book by Nelson Foster. It's fairly recent, his latest, called Storehouse of Treasures, Recovering the Riches of Chan and Zen. Now, one chapter in that book somehow seemed especially fitting. It's called, the chapter title, Putting Integrity Back into Integrity. It begins, this chapter, by unpacking the etymology of the word integrity, coming from the Latin integer, which means entire, intact, untouched, or other derivatives suggest intrinsic to or inseparable from. Inseparable, intrinsic. Sounds like true nature. Sounds like integrity as what we just are. It's what Master Isan or Guishan said in the record he wrote, or it's recorded. He said, without pretense, without front or back, without deceit or delusion, either at heart or in behavior. It's integrity. Then later in the chapter, Nelson Foster quotes an anecdote about the 17th century Japanese master Bankei. Share this. After Bankei had passed away, a blind man who lived near the temple told a friend, "Since I am blind, I cannot watch a person's face, so I must judge his character or hers by the sound of their voice. Ordinarily, when I hear someone congratulate another upon their happiness or success, I also hear a secret tone of envy. When condolence is expressed for the misfortune of another, I hear pleasure and satisfaction, as if the one condoling was really glad there was something left to gain in their own world. In all my experience, however, Bankei's voice was always sincere. Whenever he expressed happiness, I heard nothing but happiness. And whenever he expressed sorrow, sorrow was all I heard. Somewhere in this chapter, Foster says, Yasutani Roshi, who was, I think, he was Dharma of Aiken, so Yasutani was Aiken's master. It says, Yasutani Roshi is remembered as saying to one of his students, if you were completely sincere, you would be enlightened at this moment. Wow, let's take that to heart. Just that. And then Foster follows this with a short verse by one of Yasutani's female successors, the nun Satomi Myodo. It says, at the end of her enlightenment account, Satomi writes, awakening from the dream I see. Sincerity is simply my original nature. Where then shall I look for it? Seeking, seeking. What if it's right here? Yeah, who knows when and how each of us might awaken. It's no small thing. It's a huge gift. And it can again and again. And yet, already so, that authenticity we long for, the integrity we want not only to see but to be. Come home, come home. The poetry, the koans, the tradition calls out to us. And then come into the light of day and let that realization be made real. Because this is it. Thank you.